Have you ever spent months building the perfect surprise for someone you loved, only to watch them hand your place to another man without a second thought? I didn't yell. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't even ask, "How could you?" Instead, I sent a single text. "Have an amazing trip. Tell Ryan I said thanks." 3 minutes later, my phone exploded with calls. Because my wife suddenly realized something terrifying. I knew everything. But before I tell you how I destroyed the fantasy she'd spent weeks building, do me one favor. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever wished karma would finally catch up with people who think they can walk over your heart without consequences, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay until the end. Because this story proves one thing: patience is the most dangerous weapon an honest person can possess. My name is Nathan Carter. I'm 44 years old, and for nearly 20 years I've owned Carter Hardware, a family-run store just outside a quiet coastal town. People know me as the man who fixes things. Broken locks, broken plumbing, broken lawn mowers, sometimes even broken marriages. Neighbors would sit on overturned paint buckets while I handed them free advice about relationships they never asked me to solve. Funny thing is, I could repair almost anything, except the one relationship that mattered most. 5 years earlier, I married Vanessa. She already had a daughter, Emily, who was 12 when we met. Emily never called me dad. I never expected her to. Children shouldn't be forced into relationships adults create. Instead, I focused on something much simpler: showing up. School plays, doctor appointments, flat tires, homework, birthdays. Whenever Emily needed someone dependable, I was there. Her biological father, Ryan, drifted in and out of her life like a tourist, visiting a city he'd never planned to stay in. He'd disappear for months, then return carrying expensive gifts, believing money erased absence. It never did. Meanwhile, I quietly became the person Emily trusted when life became confusing. Over time, she stopped introducing me as Mom's husband. Eventually, she simply smiled and said, "This is Nathan." Somehow, that meant even more. Vanessa often told friends how lucky she felt. "You know what I love about Nathan?" she'd say with a laugh. "He never quits on people." Every time she said those words, pride warmed my chest. I believed them. Completely. Looking back now, I realize she loved my loyalty far more than she ever loved me. When our 5th wedding anniversary approached, I wanted to surprise her with something unforgettable. For 8 months, I secretly saved every spare pound I could, skipped buying myself a new truck, worked weekends, accepted emergency repair jobs late into the night. Every extra pound had one purpose: us. I rented a beautiful beachfront cottage overlooking the ocean, white wooden balconies, floor-to-ceiling windows, the sound of waves replacing alarm clocks. I somehow secured reservations at the most exclusive waterfront restaurant in the county, a place couples booked weeks in advance. The owner owed me a favor after I'd repaired his commercial refrigeration system without charging full price. Finally, I bought Vanessa a white gold bracelet with her birthstone. Simple, elegant. Exactly the style she'd admired nearly 2 years earlier during a shopping trip she'd probably forgotten. I hadn't, because that's what love looked like to me. Remembering tiny details, protecting ordinary moments, building a future one thoughtful gesture at a time. One warm evening while burgers sizzled on the grill, I finally revealed the surprise. "I've planned something special for our anniversary," I said. Vanessa looked up from her phone. "What kind of surprise?" "A week by the ocean, just the two of us." Her eyes widened. "You actually planned all that? For us?" She smiled, walked across the garden, wrapped her arms around my neck, then whispered the 4 words I'd trusted more than anything: "I love you, Nathan." I kissed her forehead and smiled. At that moment, I had absolutely no idea those words were already becoming a lie. The following evening felt painfully ordinary. The aroma of roasted chicken filled the kitchen. The television hummed quietly in the background, though neither of us was paying attention. Emily was upstairs preparing for college orientation, and for a brief moment our home looked exactly like it always had. Comfortable, peaceful, safe. Then Vanessa carefully placed her fork on the plate. Not casually. Deliberately, like someone who had rehearsed this exact moment dozens of times. "Nathan," she said softly, avoiding my eyes. "I need to tell you something." I looked up. And, please don't overreact. Whenever someone begins a sentence with "don't overreact," they already know they're about to shatter your world. I forced a smile. All right. What's going on? She took a slow breath. Ryan called. The name alone tightened something deep inside my chest. Ryan, her ex-husband, Emily's biological father, a man who had spent years appearing only when it suited him. What about him? I asked. He wants to take Emily on a Caribbean cruise. I nodded slowly. That's actually nice. Vanessa smiled with visible relief, thinking the difficult part was over. It gets a little more complicated. My stomach sank. Emily wants both of her parents there. She finally looked at me. Ryan asked if I'd come too. For several seconds I simply stared at her. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was trying to understand. So, I asked quietly, "You're asking if I'm all right with that?" Her eyes shifted toward the table. Well, I've already agreed. Those 4 words landed harder than any slap ever could. You already agreed? I didn't think it would be such a big deal. You didn't think discussing it with your husband first might be important? It's only for Emily. Only. Such a small word. Amazing how much damage 4 letters can cause. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. When is the cruise? She answered. Every muscle in my body froze. It was the exact week of our anniversary holiday. Not the week before. Not the week after. The exact same 7 days I'd spent 8 months planning. The beach cottage. The restaurant. The bracelet. Everything. Our anniversary trip, I whispered. I know. She reached across the table. We can move ours. Move ours. Like it was a dentist appointment. Like 8 months of planning could simply be dragged across a calendar. It's Emily. She continued. She needs both her parents. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. Because trusting your wife is easier than admitting she's choosing another man over you. I stared at her face, searching desperately for the woman I'd married. Instead, I found someone rehearsing excuses. Then something caught my attention. A tiny detail. So, I asked carefully, when exactly did you tell Ryan yes? She blinked. A couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks. My heart skipped. That was before I'd even told her about the anniversary surprise. Meaning she'd already committed herself to another trip before knowing what I'd planned. She hadn't been forced into choosing. She'd already chosen. She just hoped I would quietly accept it. Nathan, she whispered. Please understand. I nodded slowly. I understand more than you think. She smiled, believing the conversation was over. It wasn't. Not even close. The next afternoon, I called the only man I completely trusted. My oldest friend, Marcus. We'd known each other since primary school. He wasn't the type to gossip. But if something strange was happening in town, Marcus usually heard about it first. We met after closing time at my hardware shop. The moment he saw my face, he frowned. You look like you've just buried somebody. Maybe I have. I told him everything. The anniversary trip. The cruise. Ryan. Vanessa agreeing without speaking to me. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he slowly rubbed his beard. There might be something you should know. The tone of his voice instantly made my pulse quicken. What? He hesitated. My cousin works at a salon. So? Ryan's been telling people he never stopped loving Vanessa. I felt my jaw tighten. Marcus continued. He keeps saying she settled for you. My fingers curled into fists beneath the counter. And according to him, Marcus swallowed. This cruise isn't about Emily. The shop suddenly became unbearably quiet. What is it about? Marcus looked directly into my eyes. He told people he's finally found the perfect opportunity to win his wife back. My heartbeat slowed. Not from relief, from clarity. Every strange detail, every excuse, every coincidence, suddenly fit together like pieces of a puzzle. This wasn't a family holiday. It was a carefully planned trap, and my wife had walked straight into it. Or worse, she'd walked willingly. For the rest of that evening, I acted like everything was normal. I laughed when Vanessa laughed. I watched television beside her. I even kissed her goodnight. But the second she fell asleep, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed Marcus's words over and over. Ryan never stopped loving Vanessa. This cruise isn't about Emily. He's trying to win her back. Each sentence settled into my chest like another brick. By sunrise, something inside me had changed. Not broken. Hardened. People think betrayal creates rage. Sometimes it does. But the most dangerous betrayal creates something much quieter. Patience. Because angry people make mistakes. Calm people make plans. The next morning I opened the hardware store as if nothing had happened. Customers came and went. I helped an elderly couple choose a new door lock, loaded bags of cement into a builder's van, explained how to repair a leaking tap. Outside, I looked exactly the same. Inside, I was watching every piece of my life rearrange itself. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. It was Vanessa. Thank you for understanding. I know this isn't easy. I stared at the message, then replied, Emily comes first. Don't worry about me. A few seconds later, she answered with a heart emoji. I almost laughed. People often mistake silence for forgiveness. They're completely different things. That afternoon, I made a phone call. Not to Vanessa, not to Ryan, to an old customer named Daniel, who worked in regional bookings for the cruise company. Years ago, I'd repaired his workshop after a flood. He still owed me a favor. Nathan. He answered cheerfully. What can I do for you? I need you to check a reservation. There was a brief silence. You know I'm not really supposed to, I know. I'm only asking because I wouldn't ask unless it mattered. He sighed. Give me the names. I did. 2 days later, Daniel called back. His voice sounded completely different. Nathan, what? I found the bookings. I waited. There are 2 cabins. I know. No, he interrupted. You don't. I gripped the phone tighter. The first cabin is under Ryan's name. With Emily, yes, and the second, there was another pause. It was booked separately. My pulse quickened. Whose name? Vanessa. Every nerve in my body came alive. When was it booked? Daniel cleared his throat. 11 days before Ryan booked his own. I closed my eyes. 11 days. 11 days before anyone supposedly knew Emily wanted both parents there. 11 days before Ryan even reserved his cabin. 11 days before the story Vanessa had told me could possibly have been true. Which meant only one thing. She hadn't accepted an invitation. She'd helped create it. Nathan, Daniel said carefully, there's something else. What? The cabins aren't together. I frowned. What do you mean? Ryan and Emily are staying in a standard family cabin. And Vanessa? She's booked into a private balcony suite. He hesitated. 2 decks above them. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too hot, too quiet. I thanked Daniel, hung up, then stood motionless for nearly a full minute. I wasn't imagining things anymore. I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't insecure. The facts were sitting in front of me. Cold, undeniable. That evening Vanessa found me organizing tools in the garage. You've been quiet lately, she said. I smiled. Just tired. She stepped closer. I know asking you to postpone our anniversary wasn't fair. I looked at her. For a split second I searched her face for guilt, for honesty, for anything that resembled the woman I'd fallen in love with. Instead, I saw relief. Relief that I wasn't asking questions. Relief that her secret was still safe. Except, it wasn't. I've been thinking, I said calmly. I think you're right. Her eyes lit up. Really? Emily deserves to have a good trip. She threw her arms around me. Oh, Nathan, thank you. You don't know how much this means. I hugged her back, and for the first time in 5 years, the embrace felt completely empty. While she believed she'd won the argument, I was quietly winning something much bigger. Time. Time to prepare. Time to gather evidence. Time to make sure that when the truth finally exploded, there would be no way for either of them to escape it. That night, after Vanessa went upstairs, I opened my laptop. Then I made the most important appointment of my life. Not with a travel agent. Not with a private investigator. With a divorce lawyer. Because revenge isn't always about screaming. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge begins with a single calm decision, and mine had just begun. The meeting with the divorce solicitor lasted just under 2 hours. When I walked into her office, I still carried a tiny piece of hope that there had to be some innocent explanation. When I walked out, hope had been replaced by preparation. She listened without interrupting as I explained everything. The anniversary trip, Ryan, the cruise, the separate balcony suite. The booking made 11 days before Ryan had even reserved his own cabin. When I finished, she folded her hands across the desk. Mr. Carter, she said calmly, I can't tell you what your wife intended. I nodded. I understand. But I can tell you this. She opened a folder. If this marriage ends, you're in a much stronger legal position than you realize. She explained everything. The house had belonged to me before the marriage. The hardware business was entirely mine. Most of my investments had remained separate. For the first time in weeks, I felt something unexpected, not happiness. Control. The feeling I'd lost the night Vanessa chose another man over our anniversary. Now, it was returning. Slowly, quietly, and I intended to keep it. When I arrived home that evening, Vanessa was in our bedroom packing. Summer dresses covered the bed, sun hats, sandals, a brand new swimsuit with the tags still attached. She held it against herself and smiled. "What do you think?" I looked at her for a moment. She really was beautiful. That was part of what made betrayal hurt so much. Sometimes the people who destroy your heart still wear the same face you once dreamed about. "It looks lovely," I replied. She smiled. "I was worried I'd look silly." "You won't." That wasn't a lie. It simply wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was, she looked like a woman getting ready to destroy her marriage. The night before the cruise, I found Emily sitting alone in the kitchen. She was pushing cereal around her bowl without eating it. "You don't seem very excited," I said gently. She shrugged. "I guess." I poured myself a glass of water and sat opposite her. After several moments of silence, she spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." She lowered her voice. "Do you think it's weird that Dad wanted Mum to come?" I didn't answer immediately. "What do you think?" Emily sighed deeply. "I wanted this trip to be just me and him." She stared into her bowl. But every time I said that, he made me feel guilty. She blinked quickly, trying not to cry. He kept saying we'd finally be a family again. Those words hit harder than she realized. Not because they surprised me, because they confirmed everything. Ryan wasn't trying to celebrate his daughter. He was trying to recreate a marriage, using his own child as bait. "You know something?" I asked softly. She nodded. "A child should never feel responsible for an adult's happiness." She looked at me. "Really?" "Never." Her shoulders relaxed for the first time all evening. I thought maybe I was being selfish. "No." I smiled warmly. "You're being honest." She whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. "I'm glad you're here." For a moment, my throat tightened. 5 years ago, she'd barely spoken to me. Now, when everything around her felt uncertain, I was the person she trusted. That mattered more than I could explain. Early the next morning, Vanessa rolled her suitcase to the front door. "I'll text you as soon as we get on board," she said. I nodded. "Have a good trip." She kissed my cheek. "I love you." I looked into her eyes. "I know." She smiled, completely unaware that I already knew the truth. I watched her car disappear around the corner. Then the house became unbelievably quiet. Not lonely. Just still, like the air before a thunderstorm. Late that evening, my phone vibrated. A message from Vanessa. "We've boarded safely. Emily's already made friends. The cabin is beautiful. This is going to be such a wonderful week." Attached was a photograph. She stood on a private balcony overlooking the ocean. A tropical drink in one hand. The same swimsuit she'd modeled the previous evening. She looked happy. 30 seconds later, another message appeared. "Emily needs both her parents. Thank you for understanding. I love you." I read it twice. Then I looked again at the photograph. The private balcony. The expensive suite. The smile. The lie. Slowly I typed 7 simple words. "Enjoy your holiday. Tell Ryan I said thanks." I pressed send. Placed my phone face down on the kitchen counter, and calmly continued eating my sandwich. 3 minutes later, my phone began vibrating so violently it nearly slid off the counter. "Vanessa calling." I smiled. Because people only panic when they realize the person they betrayed already knows the truth. And after nearly 2 weeks of secrets, it was finally my turn to ask the questions. My phone continued vibrating across the kitchen counter. Vanessa calling. Again. And again. Then again. I let it ring. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because for the first time in 2 weeks I was in control. When the 4th call came through, I finally answered. I took another bite of my sandwich before speaking. "Hello, Nathan." Her voice was strained. Panicked. "What did you mean by that text?" "What text?" "Tell Ryan I said thanks." I swallowed calmly. "It means exactly what it says." Silence. Then she laughed nervously. I don't understand." "I think you do." Another long pause. "Nathan, how do you know Ryan's here?" I leaned back in my chair. "I know a lot more than that." Her breathing became noticeably heavier. "I know Ryan spent weeks asking people around town about my anniversary plans. I know your cabin was booked 11 days before his. I know you're staying in a private balcony suite while Emily is sleeping in a standard cabin. And I know this holiday was planned long before you ever told me your daughter supposedly wanted both her parents together. The silence on the other end became deafening. Finally, she whispered, "Who told you?" I almost smiled. That was the question she chose. Not, "That's not true." Not, "You're wrong." Just, "Who told you?" She'd accidentally admitted everything. I have friends. This is a small town, Vanessa. You should have remembered that. Her breathing became shaky. I didn't know Ryan planned all this. I believe you. She sounded surprised. You do? I believe you didn't know every detail. I paused. But I also believe you wanted to believe whatever made saying yes easier. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. I planned our anniversary for 8 months. My voice remained calm. I worked weekends. I skipped buying myself things. I called in favors. I bought you a bracelet because you mentioned liking it nearly 2 years ago. You kissed me. You told me you loved me, and while I was planning our future, you were planning a cruise with another man. Nathan. She whispered through tears. It's not like that. Then tell me what it's like. Nothing. Only the sound of waves crashing somewhere behind her. Then I heard another voice. Ryan. Distant. Laughing. As if this entire situation were some harmless game. Something inside me went cold. Not angry. Certain. Is Emily having fun? I asked. Vanessa hesitated. I think so. You think so? Another silence. I talked to her before you left. That caught her attention immediately. You did? She told me she wanted this trip to be just her and her father. Vanessa inhaled sharply. She said he kept making her feel guilty until she agreed you should come. The silence that followed lasted nearly 10 seconds. When Vanessa finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I didn't know she felt that way. No, you never asked. After we ended the call, I stood in the kitchen staring through the window into the darkness. I wasn't crying. I'd already cried enough in my own head. Now I was preparing. Over the next 6 days, while Vanessa enjoyed sunsets at sea, I stayed busy. I met my solicitor again, signed every document that needed signing, organized copies of financial records, changed passwords, moved important paperwork into my office safe, quietly separated my future from hers. Marcus stopped by almost every evening. We'd sit on the back patio drinking coffee. You seem calm, he said one night. I am. No man should be this calm while his wife's on holiday with her ex. I smiled faintly. That's because I'm no longer waiting for her to choose. I already know she did. Marcus nodded slowly. What happens when she gets back? I looked out across my garden. The hardest part. You going to scream? No. Throw her out? No. So what? I'm going to tell her the truth. What truth? That trust isn't destroyed in one big moment. It's destroyed by 1,000 small choices. And she made every single one. On the 6th evening, I received an unexpected text. It wasn't from Vanessa. It was from Emily. Nathan, can I tell you something? I replied immediately. Always. A few moments later, another message appeared. Mom and Dad keep acting like they're still married. I stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. I hate it here. Every instinct in me wanted to drive straight to the port and bring her home. Instead, I typed carefully. Hang in there, kid. None of this is your fault. She answered almost instantly. Thanks, I'm actually looking forward to coming home. I lowered my phone slowly. That single message erased every remaining doubt. This trip had never been about Emily. She had simply become the excuse 2 selfish adults used to justify their own choices. At that moment, my revenge stopped being about exposing Ryan. It stopped even being about divorcing Vanessa. It became about protecting the one innocent person caught in the middle. Because when the cruise ended, someone was going to lose everything. But it wasn't going to be Emily. It was going to be the 2 people who forgot that children always see more than adults think. 7 days. That was all it took. 7 days for my marriage to die. 7 days for Ryan to believe he'd won. 7 days for Vanessa to convince herself she could come home, apologize, and somehow stitch together the life she'd torn apart. She had no idea that while she was watching sunsets from a cruise ship, I had already buried our marriage. The morning they returned, the sky was heavy with gray clouds, the kind that make the whole world feel quieter than usual. I stood at the living room window with a mug of black coffee in my hands, watching the empty street. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was finished. At exactly 9:18 a.m., Vanessa's SUV pulled into the driveway. Emily climbed out first. The moment I saw her face, my heart sank. She looked exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. There wasn't a trace of excitement you'd expect from a teenager returning from the holiday of a lifetime. Instead, she carried herself like someone who had spent an entire week pretending everything was fine. I opened the front door before they reached it. Emily forced a small smile. "Hey, Nathan." I smiled back. "Welcome home, kid." She stepped inside, set down her suitcase, and quietly asked, "I'm going upstairs. Is that okay?" I nodded. Of course. As she walked past me, she briefly squeezed my arm. A tiny gesture. But it told me everything. She already knew something was terribly wrong. A few seconds later, her bedroom door clicked shut upstairs. Now, it was just me and Vanessa. She stood in the hallway holding her suitcase handle so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Her forced smile disappeared the moment our eyes met. "Nathan," she whispered. Before you say anything, I calmly interrupted. "How was the cruise?" She blinked. "What? The cruise?" I folded my arms. "The weather good? The food worth it? And how was the private balcony suite?" Every drop of color drained from her face. She looked as though the floor had vanished beneath her feet. "What? The balcony suite?" "The one booked 11 days before Ryan even reserved Emily's cabin." Her lips parted. Nothing came out. I continued. "I know Ryan spent weeks asking around town about my anniversary plans. I know he timed this trip to destroy ours. I know he told people he'd finally found the perfect chance to win you back. I know Emily never wanted you there. I know she spent the entire week watching two adults pretend to be a family again." Each sentence struck harder than the last. She began shaking her head. "No, Nathan. It's not what you think." I looked directly into her eyes. "Then tell me." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing, because lies fall apart the moment they collide with facts. Tears began rolling down her cheeks. "I honestly thought this was about Emily. So did I." I answered quietly. "Until I discovered the second cabin." She covered her mouth. "I made a mistake." I nodded. "You did. It doesn't mean I don't love you." Those words should have broken me. Instead, they sounded strangely empty, like echoes from a house nobody lived in anymore. "You didn't wake up one morning and decide to betray me," I said softly. "You betrayed me a little at a time. The day you agreed without asking me. The day you hid the booking. The day you let me keep planning our anniversary. The day you looked me in the eyes and still chose silence." She collapsed onto the bottom step of the staircase, sobbing. "Nathan, please. 5 years. Doesn't that count for something?" I looked around the hallway we'd painted together, the photographs on the walls, the memories, the home we'd built. "It counted for everything," I replied. "Until you proved it counted for less than 1 week with Ryan." She stared at me through tear-filled eyes. "Can we fix this?" I slowly reached into my briefcase, removed a neatly organized folder, and placed it gently on the hallway table. She looked down, then back at me. "What is that?" "My solicitor prepared it 2 weeks ago." Her breathing stopped. You spoke to a solicitor before I left?" "Yes, you already knew?" "I knew enough." She covered her face. "Oh my God, I gave you every opportunity to tell me the truth. You chose not to. I gave you every opportunity to choose our marriage. You chose someone else's fantasy." Then I slid the folder across the table. Divorce papers. Already completed. Already signed. Waiting only for her signature. She stared at them as though they were written in another language. This can't be happening. It already happened." I answered calmly. "The moment you chose that cruise over us." At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. One message. From Ryan. "Hope there's no hard feelings, mate. Let's keep things civil for Emily's sake." I looked at the screen, then smiled. Not because the message amused me, because Ryan still believed he'd won. He had no idea. His greatest defeat was only hours away. Ryan's message stayed on my screen for several seconds. "Hope there's no hard feelings, mate. Let's keep things civil for Emily's sake." I read it twice. Then I smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it proved exactly how arrogant he was. He genuinely believed he'd won. He thought I'd been left broken while he sailed into the sunset with my wife. What he didn't know was, everything he believed he had gained was already slipping through his fingers. I typed one short reply. "No hard feelings. You'll understand soon enough." Then I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket. Vanessa looked up at me through tear-filled eyes. Who was that? Ryan, her expression froze. What did he want? To tell me we should keep things civil. She closed her eyes. Oh God, he has no idea, does he? No. And neither did you. Over the next hour we talked more honestly than we had in years. There was no shouting. No insults. Just painful truth. I never meant to hurt you, Vanessa whispered. I believe you, I answered calmly. But intentions don't erase choices. She cried harder. I thought I could make everyone happy. No, you wanted everyone to be happy with you. There's a difference. She lowered her head. I continued quietly. You wanted Ryan to believe there was still hope. You wanted Emily to think everything was normal. And you wanted me to patiently wait at home until you came back. Her silence confirmed every word. You weren't protecting anyone. You were protecting yourself. For the first time, she didn't argue. That afternoon there was another knock at the front door. Ryan. He stood outside wearing sunglasses and a confident grin, holding a souvenir gift bag. Hey Nathan. He acted as though nothing had happened. I just wanted to drop off some gifts for Emily. I stepped outside and quietly closed the front door behind me. His smile remained. So, he said. No hard feelings? I looked directly into his eyes. I've got something for you too. He laughed. Oh yeah? I reached into the folder I'd been carrying, not the divorce papers. Another document. A printed copy of every message, booking confirmation and witness statement my solicitor had organized. His smile faded. What is this? Evidence, his eyebrows knitted together. Evidence of what? That you deliberately interfered with a marriage. His confidence began to crack. You can't prove anything. I don't need to. I answered calmly. I only need to prove enough. He swallowed. You've been telling half this town you were getting your wife back. His face turned pale. You asked people about my anniversary. You organized the timing. You manipulated your own daughter. And now, I took one step closer. Emily knows exactly what you did. For the first time since I'd met him, Ryan had nothing to say. The front door opened behind me. Emily stepped onto the porch. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked directly at her father. Dad. Ryan forced a smile. Hey, sweetheart, she didn't smile back. You lied to me. His expression changed instantly. What? You said this trip was for us. She shook her head. It wasn't. It was about you and Mum. Ryan looked desperately toward Vanessa. She couldn't even meet his eyes. Emily continued. You made me feel guilty until I agreed. You kept saying we'd be a family again. She wiped away a tear. I already had a family. Then she turned and looked at me. Nathan, the man who had never tried to replace her father, the man who had simply shown up. Again and again, she walked over, wrapped her arms around me, and quietly said the words I never expected to hear. Thank you, Dad. Time seemed to stop. Ryan's shoulders slumped. Vanessa covered her mouth, sobbing. I felt tears sting my own eyes. Not because I'd won. Because after 5 years, the little girl I'd loved like my own had chosen me freely. No court could award that. No revenge could create it. It had been earned. One ordinary day at a time. The divorce was final several months later. Vanessa moved into a small apartment across town. Ryan's relationship with Emily became distant after she learned the full truth. Trust, once broken, is painfully difficult to rebuild. As for me, I kept the hardware store. I renovated the beachfront cottage I'd originally rented for our anniversary, and eventually bought a similar property overlooking the sea, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof that broken dreams can become new beginnings. Emily visited often during university holidays. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch watching the waves roll in, talking for hours. One evening she smiled and said, You know, the best revenge wasn't ruining their plans. It was refusing to let them ruin your life. I looked at the horizon. She was right. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's waking up one morning and realizing the people who betrayed you no longer control your happiness. That's when karma truly wins. If this story kept you hooked until the very end, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable revenge story. And tell us in the comments, what was the biggest mistake Vanessa made, and would you have forgiven her? Until next time, remember this, the strongest revenge isn't hatred. It's building a life so peaceful and successful that the people who betrayed you can only watch from a distance.